Hello, everybody. Good morning, and welcome to our show. As I drop the blinds right here, gotta love live TV. Beautiful. There we go. Hello. Good morning. Welcome. Welcome to Invisible Condition. It is not all in your head. I'm your host, Jeff Pearson, reminding you that you are not alone. You are not alone. In a world where it's easy to feel invisible, I want you to know that I see you. Okay, and we are a community, and I'm here to show you just how big and how beautiful that community can be. This is my beautiful wife and co-host for today, Catherine.
Hello.
So today we're going to talk about hydrocephalus. I don't know if anybody's heard of it. Over the years, talking about it with people, it seems like people don't really know what it is, but it's a lot more common than people think, and we're going to dive into that a little bit today. I was born with it and diagnosed at 2 weeks old, and so we've been dealing with this for a little while. And
it's true.
Yeah,
it's true. First, before we dive into hydrocephalus and all that involves, I want to acknowledge our live audience. If you're watching and you want to interact with us live, you can just go to our Facebook channel. If you go into Facebook and just search Invisible Condition, don't put a "the" in the front, don't put anything else on the end, just put Invisible Condition in the search, and we should pop up, and this live broadcast should be available for you to comment directly into the chat with us.
Yes.
So you can interact with us. So on that note, do any of you know, besides Jeff?
Besides me. Hi.
Besides Jeff, does anyone know anyone with hydrocephalus, or do you deal with it yourself? We'd love to hear from you. Just drop that in the chat for us.
Yeah. Comment on it. Let us know. I don't know. Let us know how long you've had it, if you were born with it, when you found out. You know, everybody's story is a little different, so it's kind of fun.
Yeah. Fun stuff. So, Jeff, are we ready to dive into all about you and hydrocephalus?
Bring it on. Let's do it.
Okay, so first, so Jeff is your host, right? But for today, like we mentioned, we're going to be kind of introducing Jeff and who he is and the condition that he deals with, so that you guys know as we're going forward his background and what it is that he deals with. So he's right alongside with everybody else that is dealing with an invisible condition. So
absolutely,
we can relate. So let's dive in. So Jeff, tell us more about hydrocephalus. What does that mean? What does it entail?
So hydrocephalus is something that I was born with. Not everybody's born with it, but most of the time, I was born with it. I found out that I had hydrocephalus, or my parents, I should say, found out that I had hydrocephalus when I was 2 weeks old. I was born via emergency C-section, and then at the 2-week checkup, they went and did all the normal stuff they do for the normal checkup and everything. And then one of the parts of that is to measure the circumference of the baby's head to make sure it's growing normally and everything. And that's when they found out that mine was growing abnormally large, abnormally fast. And they said, let's get a CAT scan, see what the heck's going on here. And that's when they found out that there was a blockage that caused me to have brain surgery and have my first shunt put into my head in 2 weeks old.
2 weeks. That's crazy.
Yeah, a little bit. For my parents, probably more. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So in our second segment, after our first commercial break, we're going to get more into all of the stories around, how this started in particular for Jeff, and how that has translated throughout his life and what that has meant. But for now, for this first segment, we're gonna talk more about some of the details of hydrocephalus and what some of the statistics are. So you mentioned it might be more common than we think. So what statistic?
Really, yeah, it's very common. It's actually just as common as Down syndrome, which everybody knows. Probably everybody out there knows somebody with Down syndrome, right? This is just as common as Down syndrome. It's actually more common than spina bifida, which is another condition that people are born with that has something to do with the spinal cord and I don't know a whole lot about that, but it's more common than that, or tumors actually. So but the problem is, well, the problem and maybe the good thing is, to look at me, you would never see. You would say, "Oh, he's normal," but it's a thing, so it's very common. About 1 million Americans are walking around right now with hydrocephalus. So look around, probably look to your right, look to your left. You probably saw one. About 1 in every 770 babies born in the United States are born with hydrocephalus, right? So that is a huge. I know that doesn't sound 770 doesn't sound like a huge number, but man, it's a lot. So that basically, if you translate that out into the national population of 330 whatever million people are in the country, that's almost 430,000 babies born every single year with hydrocephalus. That's a big number. That's a lot,
right?
So,
totally, yeah. Which means a lot of surgeries are happening as well.
Good Lord, yeah. Surgery. And by the way, that's the only thing really. That's like the main treatment for hydrocephalus is brain surgery, which that sounds kind of scary, and it is. If I was a parent, God bless my parents, man. We've got 3 children of our own, and if any of them at 2 weeks old at the 2-week checkup, they dropped the word brain surgery on me, I don't know. That is a lot to handle. So, but that is about every 15 minutes. Somebody's having brain surgery to have to have the proper, for me it was a shunt to be put in to compensate for the hydrocephalus. So it's every 15 minutes. It's crazy in this country, just in this country. That's not worldwide even. So right.
So little tiny mini medical lesson. A shunt is a mechanical device that goes into. Well, there's a part of it that goes into the brain, and the rest sits right outside the skull, underneath the skin.
Right there.
And it is a mechanical pulling of the extra fluid that's in the brain. It pulls out that fluid and drains it elsewhere into the body.
Yep.
So that's your mini lesson.
There you go. Your little mini medical lesson for today that you didn't bargain for. So and over the years, I've had a lot of different things with that, but we'll get into that next. It's funny that it's not just babies though. It's really, this was fascinating to me when I learned this. It's that 1 in every 100 seniors actually have what's called normal pressure hydrocephalus, but they don't know it because they get misdiagnosed. It gets misdiagnosed as Alzheimer's, which is crazy because everybody thinks, you think of Alzheimer's and you think it's, incurable and it gets progressively worse. But really it could be hydrocephalus, and you could put a shunt and it would, possibly help. So that's something to check out.
Right. So if you have an elderly person in your life that is dealing with what seems like an onset of dementia or Alzheimer's, you might consider asking your medical provider to just ask, can we just scan for this?
Yeah.
Because
exactly.
it would be a simple CAT scan, wouldn't it?
CT scan, yeah, yep. And really, you mentioned dementia. That's 1 in 10 dementia patients too. So dementia, Alzheimer's, they kind of, sometimes they kind of go hand in hand, and that is 1 in 10 dementia patients that have normal pressure hydrocephalus, that they're never even going to be diagnosed because everybody thinks dementia, right? So it's crazy. It's crazy.
Absolutely. So what other questions do I have? Let's see. We talked about treatment options. So one question that I wanted to bring up too is brain surgery kind of sounds like a big deal, right? And so there might be people asking, are you sure this is an invisible condition? Don't people see it? Because so what can you describe a little bit about how does this remain invisible in your life?
How does it remain invisible? The most obvious ones that you see that are conditions, like I mentioned before, like Down syndrome, there's a physical manifestation with, structural things in the skull, in the face, in the body, and the different things, are growing and development and all that kind of stuff. With hydrocephalus, with just hydrocephalus alone, there are not, this is very invisible right here, the shunt. I mean, you can't see it. It's covered up with hair.
Right.
So it's under the skin and it's covered up with a lot of hair. So, so that makes that part invisible. And as far as the condition in my life being invisible, it's invisible because it's invisible when everything goes well. I'll say that. When things go well and surgery goes as planned and the device works correctly and, everything comes together the way it's supposed to, then yes, it's invisible. It was very invisible for a long time. It's gotten a little more visible in recent years, but yes, generally speaking, it's invisible. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Just wanted to, in case our audience was wondering how brain surgery is.
For sure.
Stayed that way. Did you have other statistics that you wanted to
mention?
Well,
probably the kind of a crazy fact about these shunts. There's several different types, several different, there's adjustable and non-adjustable and fixed and, blah, 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 blah. Well, no matter what the shunt is, believe it or not, in the last however many decades that we've been doing this with these shunts, it still remains one of the highest failure rates of any medical device in history. And so the one thing with people with hydrocephalus, we affectionately call ourselves hydro warriors sometimes. Hydro warriors get to do a lot of brain surgery and related surgery. It's not just up here because there's different pieces of it that have to go other places, and we'll get into that later. But surgery is a thing. And so because these devices fail so often, it's just you just count on it. You're just going to have surgery.
It is unfortunately not one and done for most people.
I've heard of those people. I know some of those people. We've met them, but
it's a little rare.
It's
a little rare.
It's rare. Yeah. We'll get into that later. It's the how long some of them have lasted and things like that. But
right.
Yeah.
So I think this would be a good place to take a commercial break.
Perfect.
So stay tuned. Like I said, when we get back, we're going to go into all the fun stories, all the juicy details about, specifically what's gone on with Jeff.
Juicy details.
It could be a phrase.
It sounds great.
Am I dating myself?
You're awesome. No, it's good.
Anyway, we're going to go on into all the fun stories when we get back. So stay tuned through this quick commercial break that I'm hoping I can launch. Welcome to live TV.
right. Welcome back, everybody.
Hi.
Here we are. This is cool.
Okay, so like I said, story time. Everybody get out your popcorn or your snacks
or your coffee.
I'm gonna take a sip too.
Let's drink some coffee.
As you continue to watch the show, Jeff will you'll most likely see him drinking coffee because he loves it. So
it's a thing. It's a thing. Yeah, coffee's good.
So Jeff, let's go back to your childhood, back to the beginning again. We talked about it a little, and what so you talked about how your parents discovered it, right?
Yep.
They were told, and then you had brain surgery at 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Do you have a first memory of realizing that you had this thing called hydrocephalus, this condition?
Probably the first memory I have of any of this is just a lot of doctor's appointments. As a kid, I just remember just going to a lot of doctor's offices. And in particular, there was one guy that we got to see a lot when I was a kid. His name was Dr. Hendy. And he was my neurosurgeon when I was a kid for the first few surgeries that I had when I was a little boy. I don't know, all of it was before about 5 years old, but I distinctly remember Dr. Hendy, and he was awesome. And so I do remember that. Fun story about Dr. Hendy. Mm-hmm. He still to this day remains my favorite neurosurgeon. I know that's kind of a weird thing to have a favorite of, but he's since passed. He passed away a few years ago. But shout out to him and his family. Oh man, supporting him to do neurosurgeons for. He sacrificed for his family like you wouldn't believe. It was crazy. So we actually got to go visit him after we retired. He moved to Austin with his family, Austin, Texas, and we got to visit him. And that was a bucket list moment that I didn't know was a bucket list moment till we were doing it. You know, we got to go meet him and shake his hand and give him a hug and hug his amazing wife and meet his kids and grandkids and say thank you for everything you did and sacrificed because he did sacrifice over his career. It was insane. So anyway, and we digress. That was so. No, I don't think it's a digress at all. I think it's if you know a neurosurgeon or if you work with a neurosurgeon, remember to thank him. Hug them today, right now. Go hug them. Right. Because they do amazing work. And my current neurosurgeon, Dr. Ritter, is pretty awesome too. He's done some amazing things, but there's always something about that first one, you know. Right. So, and then I got to know him and stuff. But anyway, okay. So my story. So 2 weeks old, neurosurgery, first shunt, and so just to give everybody an idea, so the shunt is back here, and so it's got what it is a little pump. It's about this big, and it's a little plastic pump back here, and it's also got a little they call it a catheter, and then it attaches to the shunt and goes into a hole in my skull that they created when I was 2 weeks old, and goes into the ventricle in the brain to draw that cerebral spinal fluid out of my brain and into the pump, the shunt, and then there is a cord that's attached to the bottom of the shunt that comes down and into the body, and it reabsorbs the fluid. So people that didn't have the blockage that I did, the brain just kind of does it naturally. I get to have a pump to help. So that's the thing that fails a lot. And so when I was a child, we did a few surgeries. I think there was a couple. There was one at 2 weeks old, one at a few months old, one at 2 years old, I believe. And then we did one at 4 to put a longer cord, you know, so that I could grow and it would, you know, grow with me. All very important things. Mm-hmm. And then really, I didn't really notice it. I did a lot of all the crazy stuff that boys do. Kids. Kids and particularly boys. We're nuts. Come on, let's be honest, everybody. Little boys are crazy. And so I did skateboarding and riding my bike and all that stuff. Even broke my arm on skateboard one time, ran into a pickup truck on a bike. I mean, it was,
We have
we
we have home videos to prove that he's skateboarded. And
we do.
Our kids actually love watching Dad on, what is it, 12, 13
When I was 13 years old on with my broken arm and a skateboard. Anyway, it was a good time. Anyway, all that to say, I had a very normal childhood. It was amazing. I had the coolest childhood. I mean, going on spring break trips and having birthday parties and doing all the normal stuff the kids do. Shout out to my parents, by the way. Mom and Dad, Scott and Joan, thank you. You made my childhood amazing, and it was in many ways, but in one way that I look back now, I only would have known this looking back. But obviously with a device in your head that you don't want to get damaged because it could really mess you up. I didn't play a lot of football. Surprise.
Basketball,
I didn't play football. I didn't play basketball, hockey,
lacrosse.
That'd be hilarious.
Rugby. No.
You don't want to see me on skates. Ironically, I did skateboard and snowboard, which is kind of without a helmet, no less. Don't do that, kids. Don't do that, kids. Yeah, it was the 80s. Nobody did anything with protection with your head in the 80s. Anyway, so I did a lot of normal stuff, and they were amazing because they didn't say, no, you can't do that. You can't play football. You can't play because you have this thing, and it's, and they never created a stigma. They never created a situation where I felt less than because I had this. And I just thought I was a normal kid that just had to watch out for, bumping his head once in a while, and had to go to the doctor a few times more than most kids. It was awesome. I cannot thank you guys enough, Mom and Dad, about that. So it was amazing.
What did they gently steer you towards?
I'm so thankful they did. They gently steered me in sixth grade, toward the end of sixth grade, into junior high towards band, which is awesome because guess who I met in seventh grade band class?
Hello.
We met when we were 12. So that was fun. I didn't have the courage to talk to her for about the first several months of the year.
It took a few months to talk to her. But it was middle school.
It's all good. Middle school's crazy. You know how it goes. Anyway, so all through that, we, everything was so normal and it was amazing. And graduated high school. Actually, before we graduated high school,
I was gonna say, let's talk about high school.
Back up that a little bit. I had the job at Blockbuster Video, right? For
again, the 80s.
Yeah. Hello. Be
Early
kind.
90s.
Rewind.
Early 90s. Yeah.
Early 90s. Yeah. So the Blockbuster Video, and so it was normal. Everything was cool. And then about sophomore year in high school, I started noticing headaches, and I was like, what's going on here? Everybody knows that there's headaches, and then there's those headaches. There's like, oh, my head kind of hurts. I'll pop a Tylenol. And then there's the bad ones, and I was getting it progressively got worse over my junior and senior year. And I don't think a lot of people knew, because as a hydro warrior, you have kind of a high pain tolerance, or you develop a very high pain tolerance, which can be bad and good. But it was, and so over those couple of years, I discovered through many, many doctor appointments that the shunt was, the cord had fused to my muscular tissue and had not allowed the shunt to grow with me. And so it was literally pulling out of my skull, which, as you can imagine, can cause some headaches. And so that was my first conscious, I know what's going on surgery. Neurosurgery is 18, summer after senior year, did that. And then, as a crazy kid that I was, we fixed it. It was great. I felt fantastic. So I, took off for a year to travel with a music company called Up With People for a year, and sang everywhere around the world for a year. So, that was fun. So there was some opportunities that, my point is, I never missed anything because of this. I know that this is my story, and there are a lot of people out there, God bless you, that have had a lot more surgeries than I have in a lot shorter period of time, and have maybe made it out with a little more side effects and a little more, dependency on this or that, or, different things that aren't able to take advantage of some of these opportunities. But I was so fortunate to be able to do that. And that's part of the reason that we're doing this, because I feel like God has called me to do this, to be a conduit for other people that have conditions that they can't articulate because they're invisible. So that's why we're here. But anyway,
yeah, we'll get into more of that and a little bit later after our next commercial break.
Yeah.
First, I wanted to just acknowledge from our audience. We've had a couple comments. So I want to say welcome to Eddie and Courtney.
Thank you
both. Thank you for joining us and for commenting that you're with us. We thank you for that. I also, based on what Jeff just said, I want to welcome anyone who has hydrocephalus, who's maybe has a different type of hydrocephalus or has had way more surgeries. Let us know in the chat, and maybe on a future episode, we can have you on to talk about your experience and your story.
Yeah, everybody's experience is different, and I am so excited to hear your story.
Yeah.
I want to hear your story. It's going to be awesome, because everybody's story is important to them, and everybody wants to tell it.
Yeah.
So
bring
it.
So feel free to comment in the chat. Even if you're not live, I think you can still comment on the show.
You can comment on the Facebook page, on the
and let us know.
Absolutely. Yep.
So you had surgery right after high school. Mm-hmm. We got married.
Yes.
Shortly.
Yay!
A few years after that, we got married. We have 3 beautiful children. They are now teenagers. We have a 19-year-old, a 16-year-old who's learning to drive, and an almost 14-year-old. So a little shout out to them, to our kiddos. Elizabeth, yes. Nick, and Kasha. We see you too. But so we had kids, and then let's jump to the fall of 2013 so we were, let me back up real quick. So we were really fortunate to have about 14 years of marriage where we were just doing our married thing, right? We were working, we were playing, we were, having kids, raising kids. But then, like I said, it was the fall of 2013 when that all shifted a little bit. So
everything got really interesting.
Yeah. So why don't you tell that story?
So in August of 2013, I woke up one morning and said, it feels a little weird. Like I felt like I ate something I shouldn't, but it wasn't a big deal. It was just a tummy ache, right? So I just kind of went about my day. And we, went, and it progressively got worse and worse throughout the day. And then that evening, it got really bad, and I couldn't stand up straight. And I drove myself home, which was probably not smart. But like I said, high pain tolerance. And got home, called the ambulance from there, which is always kind of weird, calling the ambulance for yourself, but whatever works. I called the ambulance, went to the hospital. Turns out all the scar tissue from all these surgeries over the last 30 years had apparently collected enough in my abdomen to the point that it blocked off my intestine. And so it was not great. Felt terrible. Could not stand up straight. So took the ambulance ride, had emergency surgery, stayed in the hospital for a week. And, got all that cleared out, and everything was cool. The shunt was still working. The, everything worked out okay. 6 months later, turns out we don't know if it had anything to do with each other, but 6 months later, I found out I had a bacterial infection in my cerebral spinal fluid, which I've said that in the abdomen, which I know I threw that term out earlier. Cerebral spinal fluid is CSF, is all the fluid that's in your brain, in your spinal column, that your brain produces every day. You produce about a quart every single day that drains and reabsorbs in your body, and it's continually producing this cerebrospinal fluid. So anyway, the CSF somehow became infected with a bacteria, which is bad. And bacterial infections are no joke. And so it felt,
especially when they're right at the end. So remember, Jeff was talking about that cord that comes down and it drains into his abdomen. Well, it was right at the end point of
exactly.
that tubing.
It was right there. So they were worried that it had traveled up, that it could travel up and infect, up closer to my brain, which really would be bad. So that is what you don't want. So so obviously, went to the hospital, kind of went through the channels for a little bit, talking to the neurologist and neurosurgeon stuff. And then one day it was just like, you know what? Nope, we're going to just show up on their doorstep and fix me, And so we drove up to the hospital and I got checked in and they did the CT scan, said, yep, you're in, let's do it. And so it was so crazy though, because because of the bacterial infection, they actually had to cut the cord and drain it externally. I know this might be gross or whatever, but so I was like attached to this, thing for like 3 weeks. They had me in the hospital for 3 weeks while the antibiotics that they were continually pumping into my body to kill this bacterial infection did its thing. And then they finally was able to say, okay, now clearly you need a new shunt because we want to make sure that there's no infection in there. So they did a brain surgery to put a new shunt in, which it didn't go 100% well. They missed the little catheter that I was talking about earlier that needs to go into the brain, didn't go into the right part. So I woke up from surgery still hurting a lot. So they, within 24 hours, put me under, did another surgery. And that time it worked. It was awesome. And there you go. And then they sent me home with a bunch of antibiotics for the next few months to make sure the infection was dead. So anyway, it worked out. It was great. We went home. Everything was cool.
It was.
Sort of.
It was.
So we thought.
And so you Hydro warriors out there, too, just how quickly things can escalate. It started as, some abdominal pain, and then all of a sudden he needs surgery. And then a few months later, he's like, there's still something not right in my abdomen. Let's do surgery again.
We thought it was an appendicitis both times. Literally, it felt like right there.
The position of it, was right by the appendix. And
if only it was that simple.
Take it out. But yeah, it's just amazing how fast stuff can escalate. And
right.
Maybe some point in a future episode, I'll come in and I'll tell more of my perspective as walking alongside him with it. But suffice it to say, it's crazy scary. And I just felt like I was praying the whole time.
Yeah.
So it was 2013, and then it was the spring of 2014. It was actually right around his birthday in March that he was in the hospital in Denver for 3 weeks. It was crazy. But like you said, he got antibiotics and cleared up the infection, and then he was good to go for a few more years.
Yeah, it was good to go for a few more weeks, and then I ended up having migraines for a while, that was talk about side effects. I had migraines for a solid year, non-stop migraines for a year. It was crazy. Which, like I said, every Hydro warrior out there knows what I'm talking about here. Every surgery is different, and every time you go poking around in the brain, it can have different side effects, and that was one of them from that surgery. This is new. I've never had side effects before. For the first 30 plus years of life, I've never had a side effect ever. And so apparently I'm getting them all at once here. And so for a solid year, I had these migraines and was thankfully able to get rid of them through a couple therapies that we'll talk about that in another episode. I really want to talk about specifically and dive into some of these, because man, there's some amazing things that you can do that are not necessarily tied to your surgeon or the hospital, that are, I don't know, alternative, I guess you can say, but they worked. I'm here. I'm upright. I'm out of that, I'm not bent over writhing in pain from a migraine, so it worked. So I'm
Yay.
good.
Yeah.
But so fast forward. So now that was 2014. Go to 2018, and a couple years later, and same kind of things happen, and there's some kind of pain, but it's all different. It all manifests itself a little bit different, so you never know exactly what's going on. But really, I just kind of assume that it's hydro related because it usually is. And so we found out that time that there was that where the cord that came from the shunt was draining, it wasn't reabsorbing because of all the scar tissue that they tried to clear out back in 2013. And of course you can't, because every time you have surgery, it creates more scar tissue. So it's like chicken or the egg, right? Just so anyway, yeah. So that was the deal for that one. Is in 2018, I had to have surgery to basically reposition the cord so that it wasn't trying to drain into somewhere that wasn't going to absorb the fluid. So they took it from, down here they looped it around to the back of the, there's called pleural space around your lung. It's a little layer, little space between the outer and inner layer of your lung. They call it the pleural space. And that's where they put the cord, and that's where it's been draining ever since. And it's been working great. So in that respect, it's been fantastic. So that was that surgery. And then fast forward to 2021, right? October of 2021. And then here we go again. For about a year before that, I was having mind-numbing cluster migraine, whatever you want to call it, pound your head with a sledgehammer kind of headaches and dizziness and vertigo and it was so crazy, and it was so new, and I tried all those things that I tried back in 2014 that worked great, and none of them worked. And I thought, what the heck is going on? So we went to the hospital again, and after a week in the hospital and a lot of tests, I wrote all the rides that day. MRI, CT, X-ray, good Lord, I don't know, you name it, I was on it at least once.
Because what was going on is that he had this severe pain in the back of his neck.
Yeah.
And so that it kind of looked like it could be meningitis. And so that was another thing that they tested for. Speaking of ride the rides.
Yeah, we don't want that.
Kids you don't want this ride.
Yeah, it's a scary ride.
You don't want this ride. Yeah. Don't try this at home.
Yeah, so they tested for all that. They did, CTs and MRIs and X-rays and ultrasounds, and good Lord, it was crazy. And finally narrowed down to, they've checked everything they can check. The only thing left is that tiny little piece that goes from the shunt into the brain that you can't see on any scan. So this is something else you don't ever want to hear. Let's do exploratory neurosurgery.
Do we have to?
Let's go in there and poke around and see what we find. So they did, and found out that the tiny little piece in my brain that went right into the ventricle to drain that fluid, suck it out of there so it can, not collect, was almost 100% clogged. So it wasn't doing its job.
That's not good.
No. So brain surgery again to fix that. And they did the surgery, came through. That was the fastest hospital trip I've ever had, actually. I went in there about 10 in the morning on the day of surgery, and they did the surgery about 3:00. And stayed in the hospital overnight. And the following day at 3:00, I remember looking at my watch going, we're driving away from the hospital at
24 hours
24 hours after surgery.
After brain surgery.
It was amazing.
What?
It was crazy. Well, 2018, the recovery wasn't too bad. I was back to work after a week, and no big deal. So that was great. But the one thing that 2021, like I said, it kind of sometimes can leave you with a little bit of after effect and different things. One of the things that that I've had my whole life is tics, and they're 99% sure they're caused by the trauma to the brain over the years of just brain surgery.
And
Go
a
ahead.
tic is just an involuntary muscle movement.
Yep.
Where your muscles move without you telling them to move. So.
Or wanting them to move sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I've always had kind of goodness, excuse me. I've always had little ones, like my head will jerk or just different stuff over the years. My eyes do certain things, which we also had surgery on those because of hydrocephalus. Anyway, so all this to say, tics have always been a part of my life, and usually they've been very small, and they've been very unnoticeable almost. I mean, you've been around me long enough, you don't notice them anyway, but
No.
even for people that I just meet, they don't really notice them for the most part. But after the surgery in 2021, they became much more pronounced and much more involuntary and extreme, I would say. And so anyway, it's just part of the journey, man. We, sometimes you just get to, it's kind of like your battle scar, like who is wrestling in the Bible. There's a story about wrestling with God, and then he, and then they end up with a thorn in his side, right? Or his limp or something.
That's two different stories.
Two different stories.
You didn't come for the Bible class.
You didn't come for the Bible study, but it kind of reminds me of that.
Wrestling with God was Jacob.
It's Jacob. There you go. And he came away with a lasting thing that was like, well, are you going to take it away? No. Okay. So, that's kind of where I'm at with these tics. It's like, okay, if it stays, it stays. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's fine. Yeah. So it's all good. It's all part of the thing.
So we brought you the whole distance, didn't we? Started from the beginning, brought you up to current, and it really gives, I think, you guys, it gives you a picture of who Jeff is and what he's been through. He's been through it, right? And so he knows, that all those invisible challenges and conditions that you have, he knows about it. He's been through a bunch.
I might not be able to relate specifically to the one that you're going to, because everybody's story is their own, but believe me, yeah, I can relate.
Yeah. So we're going to do one more quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about having hope, right?
There's always hope.
There's, brain surgeries can sound scary and stuff that's invisible and you can't control it. Can sound a little scary, but we want to end. Our goal for this is to bring hope and encouragement.
Yes.
And so we're going to do that right after the break. Stay tuned.
Life is so fragile.
All right.
Welcome back.
Here we go.
Back. We had one comment in the chat that they didn't realize that Jeff could sing. Jeff can sing. He's actually a really good singer.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I've been singing since high school when I think you and another friend of ours from high school said, "Why aren't you in choir again?" So, and then got to travel with people, which if you've never looked up that group, it's really cool.
It's fun.
It's really fun. So anyway.
All right. So we told the audience that we were going to talk about hope. So let's first actually start with, though, what was some of the beginnings of you wanting to make a difference for people?
So, thank you. I remember this. I remember this like it was yesterday. There was a follow-up appointment with my neurosurgeon after the 2018 revision surgery. And I remember the two of us went to the appointment. It was not that long after surgery, like maybe a month after the surgery. And we were sitting in the room, the little room you wait for the doctor sometimes for a while, and just kind of hanging out, looking at the magazines. And then I kind of overheard, on the other side of the wall in the next room, I could tell that there was a conversation going on and it wasn't going well. It was, they were distraught. You could just, you can't really hear the words, but you can hear the mumblings of something going on. And you could tell that they were not, it was not a good conversation. And so I kind of imagined, it popped into my head. Maybe it was just because I was where I was, but I thought, oh man, I wonder if that's a family just finding out that their little baby is going to have brain surgery. I thought, oh man, I can't imagine. I wonder what my parents felt like. I wonder what, and it's kind of cascaded from there. And we said, okay, all I wanted to do was go next door and give them a hug and tell them everything was going to be okay and answer their questions. That's all I wanted to do. It took everything in me not to do that. And so that was kind of where we started thinking, like, how can we do that? How could we do that for the community of hydrocephalus out there that needs it? Because really, as invisible this is, it's needed.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. I mean, for all your parents out there, imagine, right after your child is born, finding out that they have to have brain surgery. It would probably feel pretty devastating and traumatic and scary.
What the heck do I do now?
Right? But if you had someone who had lived with it for 40-something years, 40-something, if you could have somebody who has experience with it to come alongside of you and say, it's okay, it's all going to be okay. Look, I've been living and thriving with this for over 45 years, and it's gonna be okay.
And you can too,
right? And your child can too.
Yeah, mm-hmm. All is not lost just because of brain surgery. Mm-hmm. It is. Mm-hmm. It's just the beginning.
Yep. Yeah. It shifts the story a little, right? But it's there's hope amongst it.
There is hope.
I know that we kind of threw around ideas like, how could we help these families? How could we help couples? How could we help individuals with hydrocephalus? And it was last summer.
Yeah, we were thinking, do we want to do like an actual a building, or do we want to do something online? Do we want to do something? How do we want to do this? What would be the greatest reach? And yeah, last summer.
Yeah. And so all of you that are on Facebook messaging us, thank you. But that's one of the silver linings of social media has been the opportunity to connect with people with hydrocephalus that are all over the world.
Yeah.
There's obviously a whole bunch in the United States. And then, there's, like I said, there's people around the world in what other, Africa and New Zealand.
Oh man, I just got to chat. I got to chat with a amazing family from United Arab Emirates of all places.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, really? When would I ever get to do that?
Right? Couldn't do that aside from social media. So
cool.
So it's been one of the silver linings. Say what you want about social media. It has some downsides.
There's always good and bad, though.
It has some upsides too.
It is an amazing upside to be able to communicate with anybody. Yeah.
So we've started there's a private Facebook group specifically that we've started for people with hydrocephalus.
But there's also a page on Facebook,
mm-hmm.
and you can go on Instagram, you can go on TikTok, go on YouTube. It's called Hydro with Hope. And I will grab.
Yep,
I want to grab the book here real quick. Pardon me. And so Hydro with Hope is something that we put together just for that, to bring hope to the community that it's not the end, it's the beginning. Brain surgery is the beginning. And with the amount of people that have hydrocephalus in this country and around the world, it is so needed. And so one of the fun things that we did, and we are so excited about this, we just released it a couple of months ago. It's been on Amazon. It is our journal. We released a journal, and it's called My Hydro Warrior Story. Yeah, let me show you right here. So this is the journal right here. And it's about 150 pages. There's our picture on the back and a little synopsis and a little, there's the QR code if you want to go to the website. Anyway, it's a fill in the blank journal is what it is. And so you go in here and you start by, doing, where's the first page? There it is. So there's the first page. So here's me and here's, everything. And
opportunity to put in a picture,
stick a picture in it, draw a picture. I mean, little kids, maybe your parents got this for you. Maybe the parents get this for their little 2 or 3 year old and they can draw a picture themselves. And the idea, there's a little spot right here because multiple brain surgeries, right? So you can write 1, 2, 3, whatever the date. And there's a whole bunch of pages in here that go over everything. There's information about hydrocephalus. There's lots of these, picture frame pages. There's quotes in here from hydro warriors. Hey, look, I know that guy. So there's and then in the back here, there's actually kind of a medical record where you can keep track of your doctor and your hospital stays and all that kind of stuff. So when you go to your next appointment,
and they say, have you ever been hospitalized or had any surgeries?
Which is the dreaded question for anybody.
How much time do you have?
Right? How long is this appointment? I'm pretty sure you're only going to, hang out with me for a few minutes. So this is the perfect tool to bring with you. So anyway, that is for sale on Amazon.
Well, and I want to give a quick shameless plug. Or no, I should say not a shameless plug, a request. I have a request for guinea pigs. And can I be honest? Can I be candid? We're family here right now?
We've been
talking for a few minutes.
We've been with you for an hour. Yeah.
I am new to selling things online on our own website. And so I'm looking for guinea pigs. If anyone is willing to go to hydrowithhope.com, scroll down just a little bit. There's a picture of the cover that's on there. And I just recently set it up so that it will be fulfilled by a book publisher called Lulu. And so if anyone, like I said, if there's anyone willing to test it out and let me know how it goes, to buy one of those, see how long it takes, if it processes smooth, if there's a problem, if it works, I would just love a tester or 2 or 5 or 20
or 100. Yeah. Test it out. 1 in every 770, guys. There's hundreds of thousands of them out there. You probably know somebody and don't even know it.
Yeah. So, if you get the book and then you decide you really don't want it, don't need it, can't find a care provider to give it to, just let me know and I can refund you the money. That's no problem. But I would love for somebody to test it out for us.
Awesome. Thank you.
So
Yep.
we just have I don't know, about another minute or two. And so I think we need to end this shortly.
Yeah.
So let's wrap up with, we mentioned hydrowithhope.com.
Mhm.
Let's quickly say, let's see, that's providing hope. Is there any other topic, any other thing we want to mention about offering hope to people?
You are not alone. You are not alone. And life doesn't have to be perfect to be awesome. Okay. It's, that's it. I mean, you really, I mean, everybody's talking about, especially with social media, right? You get the perfect snapshot, but life's not perfect. Life's not perfect. And it doesn't have to be. So just roll with it and rock it because life's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Bring it on.
all right. Thank you all so very much for joining us. It was a pleasure chatting with you all. We will be back Friday. Live, 10 a.m. We're very excited to feature, it's called the Archer Foundation.
Yes.
They have, I'm pretty sure it's a pediatric foundation specifically for hydrocephalus, because they had a little one that was born with hydrocephalus. So
she's so cute.
Right? I know. Very cute. So come back and join us on Friday at 10 a.m. Mountain. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And we will see you on Friday.
Bye.
Which one is it?